Welcome in to another new podcast from Coatings Pro Magazine. My name is Ben Dubose, news editor for the AMP Publications team, and I'm your host. Today we're speaking with Joe Brandel, business development manager at Mips, which specializes in helmet-based safety. Many coatings contractors use helmets on a regular basis when they're at a job site, so the safety and PPE benefits and considerations, those are certainly of tremendous importance to our audience here at Coatings Pro. Joe, thanks so much for taking the time to chat. How are you?
Good, Ben. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a good place to start would be if you could just tell us a little bit more about yourself, both your career in the industry, your current role with MIPS, and what your team works on, particularly in the context of our contractors within the coatings industry.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Again, my name is Joe Brandel. Currently, I'm the U.S. Business Development Manager for a company called Mips, and we produce a safety system, a low friction layer, that helps reduce the rotational motion effects to the brain. And we work with helmet OEMs and manufacturers throughout the world in that regard. I've been in the business for about a little over 24 years in, mainly construction, safety, industrial. I've worked with a variety of end user types and industries, mainly focused on again, safety, personal protective equipment.
So recently, the U.S. Occupational Health Safety Administration, or OSHA, proposed a new rule for the construction industry, which requires that personal protective equipment, or PPE, fits properly. While OSHA has required construction employers to provide and maintain their PPE for some time, this would be the first time that it explicitly instructs employers to provide PPE that actually fits each employee. So, Joe, if you could just go through what's new in these proposed OSHA guidelines and what the next steps are moving forward as it pertains to properly fitted PPE.
So, as you said, basically it's an addition to their current standard, their current construction standard. But what this addition does is it explicitly requires that PPE fits the worker. And that's, obviously very important because if it doesn't fit them, if they can't wear it properly, it's likely not going to offer much protection. In helmets, in head protection products that we involve in are obviously included in that, which are very important because, all parts of your body are important, but, I can't think of any more important than your head. So
Right.
it has to fit properly. As far as going forward, contractors in your industry and any others for that matter, if they want to abide by this new standard, the new revision, they need to make sure that their workers and employees have properly fitted PPE. And that's probably going to require some training on how to don it and how to use it, whether it's a helmet or a harness or gloves or anything like safety vest. And then obviously they have to do testing or, fit testing to make sure that it fits properly. And part of that is, comfort. That's not a requirement in the guideline, but definitely, comfort drives a lot of the compliance. That's what I've learned over the years.
I'm sure some people reading and listening from the outside will hear something like employers are instructed to provide PPE that actually fits each employee and wonder why this hasn't been done before. Because on some level, it does seem fairly intuitive that this is the way it should be. Yet there are some roadblocks. There are reasons why this hasn't happened in the past. So just explain, if you could, what got this to the finish line. Why was this able to get done in 2023 from OSHA's perspective in a way that I suppose it hasn't in the past?
Yeah, from what I've read, OSHA, I think, initially proposed this back in 2016. So that was,
Hmm.
7 years ago. And they got pushback apparently from trade associations, from the standpoint where they thought there would be added cost, because they would probably have to add different models and
Okay.
different, more PPE. And then I believe the other pushback was implementation. They believed that there was going to be an issue with implementing it with their workers and employees. And I think really to answer your question, what pushed it across the finish line was just the workers themselves. I mean, whether it was women or smaller workers or even larger workers, that were, they were just kind of sick and tired of not having PPE that wasn't working for them. Like I said, I've been in the business for 24 years and I've seen situations, whether it's a pair of gloves or a hard hat or a helmet or a harness that doesn't fit properly. And again, that worker's not properly protected if they can't you wear it and use it correctly. So, to answer your question, I believe that's really what it was. And, I think that most companies were already abiding by this, before OSHA, brought it up. But it's for the few that aren't, that OSHA had to implement this into their standard.
So let's talk about some of the historical limitations. When we look at the technology, why have some traditional hard hats failed in a run-of-the-mill workplace accident? I know you all at Mips are focused on not just the fitting, but the overall technology and the protection components. Historically, where have the shortcomings been, and what are the things that you're trying to improve upon today?
As far as the industry in general, where some of the accidents related, at least helmets, have taken place, is when a helmet, this has a little bit to do with fit, but it has to do with use is probably as well.
Hmm.
When a worker didn't have their chin strap either in use correctly or snapped, and the hard hat, or the helmet flew off the worker's head during a fall. And, there have been fatalities due to that. And some of that does have to do with fit. I came across a few folks where their head was too small or even too large, where the ratcheting system, the suspension system that they had in their current hard hat would not adjust properly. It wouldn't open up far enough, and or it wouldn't tighten down to the point where it would stay on their head. So when it comes to head protection, which what I'm dealing with mainly now, those are the accidents that really I can point to recently. That's happened, especially if that helmet or hard hat does not stay on their head, it's obviously not going to protect them.
So, what data is out there with regards to accidents and the injuries and deaths that result from it? And what are some of the common causes as well that lead to those?
So, in the U.S. construction industry alone, a total of 21,400 non-fatal workplace injuries and illnesses were caused by slips, trips, and falls,
Hmm.
and that was in 2021. And a lot of those at types of accidents, because they're fall related, can lead to traumatic brain injuries or injuries on how the brain functions and performs. And we believe that construction workers are at the highest risk of traumatic brain injuries because of what they do and the environment they work in. According to the stats, there are definitely more traumatic brain injuries, or TBIs, I may refer to them as that, than any other industry by far. In the risk associated with failing to use the proper head protection can be serious and life threatening. One in five workplace fatalities occurred in construction in 2021, and over a third of those fatalities were due to slips, trips, and falls. So protecting your head is obviously of utmost importance.
What feedback have you all gotten from your clients and users and basically folks out in the field as far as their needs, their challenges, any common pain points? Just share with us, if you could, some of the stories that you hear from the field that people are really needing, and employers, I should say, when it comes to helmet-based safety.
I can point to a couple examples this week. I met with users in my area, and the common theme seems to be been that customers want to know just a few things, and first and foremost, they want to know why the industry construction is moving towards better head protection. Why some customers and contractors, or even job site owners, are requiring helmets versus hard
Mm.
hats. They want to understand that better. They want to know some of the science and information about head injuries, and within that realm, a lot of the ones that have done research, they want to know that they've done research on their own. They want to know what those injuries related to rotational motion and lateral impacts really mean, and how they're affected, and really how they can mitigate with a system like MIPS. And that there's a lot of concern as well from the users, and a lot of confusion when it comes to conflicting information, in technology. Right now, there's been a movement definitely in construction and really all trades, some more than others, to move towards better head protection. But I think the users really need to understand the risk associated, with not using the proper head protection.
So, in response to that, what types of technologies and functionality are you trying to add to your products? What are the things that you're working on from a technical perspective to try and address those needs?
So we here at Mips produce a safety system, a low friction layer for helmets, which we've developed over almost 2 decades now, with the intention of reducing rotational motion and the effects of that to the brain in the event of an accident. Usually a fall or dropped objects for that matter. Because research that we've done and others as well shows that rotational motion involves a greater risk of brain damage than straight or lateral impacts. And the purpose of our MIPS system is to add safety to help reduce the risk of rotational motion, in the event of those types of accidents.
So, you referenced earlier that this new OSHA regulation, basically, it was first proposed in 2016, correct?
Yes.
So sometimes things in this industry can move rather slowly. There are a lot of interest at stake. There's a lot of things that need to be talked through and negotiated and so on and so forth. So if we're talking potentially 7 years down the line, looking at, I suppose, 2030 and beyond, what does the future potentially look like? What are some of the technologies and regulations that are perhaps going to come to the forefront in the coming years? And are there any trends within safety and PPE that you all at MIPS are on the lookout for as you try and project out into the future?
We're focused on rotational motion, the effects and protecting and mitigating that
Mm.
effects on the brain. That's our focus. Some of the things I see is obviously, again, the trends with moving towards better head protection and making it more comfortable. When it comes to relative to this additional to the new OSHA standard relative to fit, I think some OEMs, helmet and hard hat OEMs are going to probably have to change on how they do their fitting systems. Obviously, they're going to have to either add, different more sizes or different technology when it comes to how that helmet fits the user's head. But some of the other technology I've seen, we're not involved with this, but we've got there's helmets out there now that have that are basically smart hard hats or smart helmets with IoT devices, with accessories, sensors, cameras, communication devices, and that sort of thing. So down the road, 7 years doesn't seem like a lot, but it'll happen quickly, and it seems like the technology is advancing pretty quickly in this industry.
For someone in the coatings industry that may be listening to this and has only a superficial knowledge of helmets and these technologies that you're describing, what are the ways that they can learn more? I'm sure you guys have resources, of course, OSHA does, but for someone that's, I suppose, just thinking of a hard hat that they grab from a vendor and doesn't put any more thought into the functionality, the benefits, and so on and so forth, or perhaps they're not fully up to date with what the new regulations are going to entail, what are some of the resources that they can potentially turn to if they want to learn more?
Well, I always direct folks to our website. We've got a lot of videos, a lot of data, and a lot of information on that. And that's simply just MIPS, MIPS, protection.com. We're on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and those social media outlets as well. So there's a wealth of information. The key thing is, for a user or somebody trying to educate themselves is try to find where you can understand the information and make sure that it's accurate and telling the proper story.
Absolutely, that makes sense. Folks, that is Joe Brandel, Business Development Manager at MIPS, specialist in helmet-based safety. Joe, thanks so much for taking the time today.
Thanks, Ben, for having me. Have a good day.
That'll do it for today's episode of the Coatings Pro interview series. Should mention before we close out that if you want more resources from us, of course, you can get it at coatingspromag.com, our website. But you can also check out the print issues of Coatings Pro, which are accessible through the website as well in digital form. And we have regular safety department sections within the magazine that often touch on helmet offerings, technologies, trends, regulations. We do cover safety. It's paramount to our industry and our coatings contractors. We want you all to have success and we want you to do it safely. So, yes, you can check out the resources that Joe and his team at MIPS have available, and we have some through our website and publications at Coatings Pro as well. Before we close out, I also want to throw out a plug to amp.org. That's ampp.org, the website for the Association for Materials Protection and Performance. There's some resources there that pertain to safety within the construction industry, tailored towards obviously many industries, but certainly corrosion control and protective coatings, what we specialize in at AMP. With those plugs complete, I will adjourn. For Joe Brandel, I'm Ben Dubose. Thanks as always for listening, and please come back soon for another new Coatings Pro podcast.